and welcome to the lecture. This week it's an introduction to viniviticulture, or as we'll call it, wine school. Lecture is to provide extended listening practice, to learn about the history of wine, to learn some new vocabulary, and to expose you learners to some Australian wine culture. This by looking at the history of wine, looking at why wines taste different, how to drink wine, how to choose a wine that you like, language to impress your friends, and where to go wine tasting. So first we're going to look at the history of wine. The earliest evidence of wine was in 8000 BC in Georgia, but it was in ancient Greece that wine was praised by poets, historians, and artists. This is Dionysus, the ancient Greek god of wine. He represented the intoxicating power of wine, as well as its social prestige. At this time, wine was considered a treat for the upper classes only. The ancient Greek historian Thucydides said that the people of the Mediterranean began to emerge from barbarism when they learnt to cultivate the olive and the vine. Wine has evolved as a part of life, culture, and diet. In fact, it was the Roman Empire that expanded who could access wine to France, Spain, and Germany. They developed many wineries in Europe that are still open today. Hundreds of years passed, and people began to consider wine an important part of daily diet. Throughout the fall of the Roman Empire and the Dark Ages, around the 1st and 2nd century, wine continued to be popular as water was too dirty to drink. So that's why we drink it with our dinner. Believe it or not, it was the church monasteries who had the finest vineyards in the continent. Each location had their personal way of producing wine and making it unique. In the 1800s and 1900s, the technology of wine production improved and wine became even better. Fine quality of wine was made, and we started to use glass bottles and corks, and corkscrews were invented too. France started to export wine and trade with Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Ireland, and Scandinavia for coffee and other items. In the 1800s, many vineyards in France suffered from a disease called phylloxera aphid, which destroyed the harvests. American grapes were resistant to this disease, so were planted in the French vineyards, creating a hybrid grape which made greater variety of wines. In the last 150 years, wine has been revolutionized as an art and a science. The introduction of refrigeration has meant that temperature can be controlled in the fermentation process and also in warmer climates. Harvesting machines have made collecting grapes quicker and easier, so vineyards can get even bigger. So now we're going to look at the process of making wine. Okay, so for months, the winemakers must monitor the grapes in their vineyards. They test the grapes for sugar, and when the amount is right, they're ready to be picked. The moment these grapes are picked determines the acidity, sweetness, and flavor, and the process of picking is called harvesting. In the Northern Hemisphere, the harvest usually happens between August and October, while in the Southern Hemisphere, it occurs between February and April. This is autumn in each part of the world. The grapes are then sorted into white and red, and any rotten grapes or underripe grapes are removed. So this is de-stemming and crushing. Okay, next comes crushing. This is where you've seen people stepping in big buckets of grapes. This is one way to do it, but when you're producing hundreds of bottles of wine, it's probably more efficient to use a mechanical grape crusher. Here is where the process for white wines and red wines diverge. The grapes are crushed, and the liquid that pours out is called must. If you are making white wine, only the must moves on to the next stage, but if you are making red wine, you keep some grape skins and stems in the mixture to add pigment or color and robustness, which affects the taste. So this is the must. Okay, so we've just added the yeast. Yeast is added to the liquid, which starts the fermentation process, which is what turns the liquid alcoholic. This is where the yeast eats the sugar from the fruit. To make a dry wine, fermentation is allowed to continue until all the sugar is dissolved. But to make a sweeter wine, winemakers will stop the fermentation before all the sugar is gone. Fermentation can take between 10 days to 1 month or more. So after this, the wine is racked or pressurized to transfer it to another container. This is to get rid of larger sediments in the liquid. After this, the winemaker has two options: to give the wine additional aging or to bottle it. Further aging can be done in bottles, stainless steel tanks, or oak barrels. Aging the wine in oak barrels will produce a smoother, rounder, and more vanilla-flavored wine. It also increases wine's exposure to oxygen while it ages, which decreases tannin, and it helps the wine reach its optimal fruitiness. Steel tanks are commonly used for zesty white wines. Here, the winemaker will commence fining the wine, adding substances such as clay, which collects unwanted particles and drags them to the bottom of the container. Next is filtration, where the winemaker captures larger particles in the wine, and only does the desired drink proceeds. When the wine is aged enough, it is bottled and sent to customers for the final step: drinking! Now I know what you're thinking: how can I make this for myself? Well, here's a little video on how to do it. While you're watching, make a list of the main ingredients.
Hi, my name's Aaron. I'm the producer of HLM News Now. I'm going to make Alright, as you can see, we've got a board peel, ready to go. Next step is put them in the plastic bag. Alright, plastic bag. We'll mash it all up. That is kind of what we're left with. Go ahead and add our water here. Alright, so we've got our mixture here. Next thing we want to do is to get over here to the sink, put it in the hot water. That's going to help kickstart the fermentation process. We're going to leave it here for a little bit. We'll come back and check on it. We're going to wrap it up in this towel. The reason why? The most important thing here, we've got to hide it from the guards. So make sure we have a good hiding place. Obviously, this is the kitchen, not for myself. So you can imagine where they can hide things. This is also called toilet wine. Sometimes they hide it in the toilet. We are going to hide this in the drawer. How long does it have to stay there? A couple of days. Alright, check concoction. Let's take a look here. Alright, let's pull it out here. So we've got to feed it. And what does yeast like to eat? Well, I know yeast likes to eat sugar, but I didn't know it liked to eat ketchup. Sugar. First one, ketchup. Let's go ahead and mix this up a little bit. down and we put the sugar in. That's what we have. So we're giving it another warm bath. Right here. That looks a little puffy. Might have some fermentation going on. Oh yeah. What happens actually is when the fermentation process starts, gases build up, and you get a little air in the bag. So that's kind of what we have right now. Alright, so we've got our mash here. We've got a lot of juice. This has been fermenting for several days now. Definitely smells like there's some alcohol, something going on in there. What we want to do now is strain it all out. Okay, so we've got it strained out. It's here. Take a look at it right here in this pot. There's still some chunky stuff in it. I'm going to go one step further and strain it again with some cheese cloth. It smells of stale fruit. A little bit like alcohol. That's left to do to actually try it. Cheers. It's pretty sweet, like very syrupy sweet. There's definitely alcohol in it, and there's some like saltiness to it too. I'm not sure what that is. All I can say is that if you had to drink it and you're trying to get a buzz in jail or prison, it's probably okay. But if you want to drink this on a daily basis, I would not recommend it.
Okay, so what were the main ingredients? We had oranges, water, ketchup, and sugar. Yeah. How to make it. Now let's look at why the wine we drink tastes different. So there are 6 dimensions of wine flavor. The first is acidity. One of the reasons why we drink wine with food is the tart, refreshing aspect of wine. It helps to cut fats and readies our palate for the next bite. The second is dryness or sweetness. Dryness can be accentuated by high acidity and tannin. So this is where the fermentation process really affects the taste of our wine. Third is tannin, usually only perceptible in red wines. It's the woody component that exists in grape skins and stems and seeds. It tastes like the skin on a peanut. It's very drying and helps to provide structure for the wine. The fourth is fruitiness, a measure of how intense the fruit flavors are. A function of ripeness, a very ripe wine is sort of like a very ripe banana, having rich, intense fruit flavors, as opposed to a less ripe wine, which is more like a green banana, more tart and less rich. The fifth one we're going to look at is non-fruit flavors. So anything that exists in the wine that doesn't taste like fruit. So flowers, earth, mushrooms, oak aging effects like vanilla, coconut, brown spices. And finally, we've got alcohol. This actually assists with lifting the aromas into the nose. As the alcohol evaporates, it brings some of the fruit and non-fruit flavors up into the air and allows us to smell the wine. If the wine has too much alcohol, then it will smell hot or burn your nose. So a wine of good quality holds a balance of all these things. There are 4 main contributing factors when distinguishing why one wine tastes different from another. The character of the grape, the different varieties that are used in our common wines, so Cabernet, Pinot Noir, and Riesling are some of the most common grape varieties. The character of the place where those grape varieties are grown, so the country and location, is it on a southern facing slope with lots of sun, or a rocky plain where it's cold? The character of the vintage is also a contributing factor. So the weather of the year, was it sunny, hot, cold, rainy? And then finally the winemaker's style. So the first 3 are raw materials, while the fourth is how the maker chooses to personalize it. So Pinot Noir, the grape, is actually used in Champagne and Burgundy reds. These wines aren't actually named after the grapes that are used, but after the intrinsic way that the places produce the wines. The product is such a part of the location's identity that to name it anything else just wouldn't make sense. What goes into making a good wine? Our EF team went to a winery to ask a sommelier what he thinks.
So good fruit and then good tannin structure. So tannin structure in wine can feel like bitterness, and then like stuff like quality fruit is what it starts with. So us being organic, so we only have quality fruit. So that's the makeup. It all starts in the vineyard and then brings the wine as the wine makes it comes through. Yeah, so we've done the hard work outside, bring it into the wine. You can blame it. That's it. So experience stuff. That's right. Thanks for that, mate. Too easy.
What makes a good wine?
Well, if you ask the winemaker, he'll tell you you need good fruit. He reckons all the winemaking starts in the vineyard. So if you've got good fruit, good flavours, he goes fruit first and then structure. Sorry, talking to the
Yeah,
mic.
talking to the mic.
Talking to the mic. Is it on?
Yeah. Oh, yes, it's on. There you go.
So good fruit and then good tannin structure is what you need. So tannin structure in wine, you can feel that grippiness on all your teeth stick to your cheeks. And then
I'm learning stuff right now.
quality fruit is what it starts with. So us being organic, right? So we only have quality fruit because it's not impaired by chemicals.
Okay.
So that's, the makeup. It all starts in the vineyard and then bring it to the winery as the winemaker says, don't screw it up.
Okay.
So we've done the hard work outside, bring it into the winery, don't screw it up.
Then you can blame them if they do screw up.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
So experience
Pass the
stuff.
buck.
That's right.
Thanks for that, mate.
Too easy.
To the important stuff, how to drink wine. So we're going to do a wine tasting now. If you're listening from home, just fill up your glass and we'll just start. So the first step is to look. Tip the glass like you can see at the top here and you'll see the color. If it's lighter in color, like on the left, it's younger, or it comes from a cooler climate, such as northern France, Austria, Germany, northern Italy, or Oregon, or Washington, or it can just come from a specific grape. A darker color, such as these ones on the right of each chart, indicate older age, warmer climate, such as Argentina, Australia, California, Portugal, southern France, southern Italy, South Africa, or Spain. It could also indicate that it's aged in a barrel or the specific grape variety as well. So now you're going to swirl your wine around the glass. Be very gentle with this. If you are not confident, put your glass down on the table and then just motion it using the foot of the glass. This is going to activate the legs. So look for the tiers that run down the side of the glass. The more legs that you see, the more alcoholic the wine. So now we're going to do the smell test. We always swirl the wine because that's what releases the aromatics. Smell your wine and try to separate the smell into 3 components. Fruit, which is anything you would find in the shelf of a produce department in your grocery store. Earth, things that smell more organic, such as soil, mushrooms, if it smells wet or like a damp basement. And wood, so anything in the baking department. Caramel, cloves, cinnamon, vanilla, spice, or coconut. So I think of this as anything that that smells like brown. You're going to taste your wine, finally. Toss it around in your mouth and aspirate it. So you want to angle your head down and just sort of, like you're slurping through a straw, you just want to suck some air in. It brings the aromas through the retronasal cavity up through your nose. This is where we talk about weight and body. So does it feel like skim milk, full fat milk? Body really comes down to the amount of alcohol that's in your wine. As wine contains more alcohol, it becomes more viscous, heavier. It feels fuller in our mouths. So now that we've done it ourselves, let's watch the pros do it.
Snappy wine.
So there's the
Right,
legs.
So now we're going to move into red. I'm going to take this plate here because it's somewhat white. And you tilt it against the background like this. And here's the thing with red wine. As white wines age, they actually gain color. So if you think like about an apple that sits on the counter, it actually gets brown. As red wines age, they actually lose color. You see how it's like a hot magenta on the outside? If this wine was older, it would be almost orange or brick. Also, if you can't see through it, that's usually a thicker skin grape. If you can see through it, it's usually a thinner skin grape.
This is a thick skin grape.
This
and
appears
it's
to be, and it's young. Right. See, look at you.
I drink a lot.
So we'll go ahead and do the smell.
Okay.
So fruit, you know, black cherries, black plums. Really what I'm getting here more than anything is just spice notes, you know, like cinnamon. There's a little bit of funky animal, like a little like gamey leather, right? There's a little funk in here. But do you get violets? Like floralness, like purple flowers? You gotta up your flower smell.
I gotta smell more flowers. So could you describe what you think is a bad wine?
A bad.
Okay. So now we're coming to choosing a wine. Take a minute to pick your favorite pizza. This will help you to decide what flavors you want to pair it with and how the wine will cut through the flavors and the heaviness of the cheese. Personally, my favorite's a margarita pizza, so I would pair that with a Pinot Grigio. When choosing your wine, one of the most important things is to know your adjectives. Expressions like bland and table wine are usually cheaper, but bland and unbalanced. Consider how strongly flavored or rich the meal is, and match it with a similarly full-bodied wine. So wines that are described as full-bodied, deep, rich, complex, or densely layered pair well with heavy meals like steaks, spicy dishes, and rhubarb crumble. Conversely, light, balanced, crisp, or refreshing are more appropriate for lighter meals with less powerful flavors like vegetables, chicken, fish, or lighter cheeses. You have three choices here. You can choose to complement flavors with a simple matching. So think, if my wine has blueberry and chocolate in the description, would that look right on my plate? Does it match what I'm eating? You can contrast flavors that would make a dish pop. So a salty, acidic food like oysters pair with fruity, soft Sauvignon Blanc, while a hot, oily curry is well contrasted by an acidic, fresh, citrus-like red, like rosé. Finally, sweeter wines such as Riesling cut through spice and make flavors pop. Champagne with anything salty highlights the sweetness in that drink too. Some help with how to choose a wine.
So that to me, I'd go, I like that label. Obviously, then you just bottle of wine, I want to have a nice label. But you can pick up the bottle and read the back of it, and it'll give you a description. A red wine like this will say something about dark fruits, so that might be so then you can always look at something else. So grape variety can also play a big part in eating. So this one Riesling, I'm a huge fan of Riesling because I like to buy Riesling type is a good combination with acids and wine with spices. So it could be the food you're eating or particular style that you like. So if you like something sweet, I would pick this one. You can get something like this. It's in a small bottle, so you can get so this one does good cheese as well. So it can be difficult if you're walking shopping down. But price is definitely one thing. Food label. If outside of that, you don't really know. Okay, thank you very much.
What should people consider when buying a wine?
Well, there's lots of things to consider. I always think budget is a good one. What can I afford? If you've only got $20 in your pocket, you want to get yourself a nice bottle of wine. A lot of people will pick label. So this is a nice label. So that would, to me, I'd go, I like that label. If I'm going to sit there and drink this bottle of wine, I want to have a nice label looked at. But you can pick up the bottle and read the back of it, and it will give you a little bit of a description of what the wine's about. A red wine like this will say something about dark fruits, forest floor, which is quite typical, and that might be appealing to some and not others. So then you can always look at something else, like this one. So grape variety can also play a big part in what you're eating. So this is Riesling. I'm a huge fan of Riesling personally because I like Thai food. Riesling and Thai food's a good combination. It's got to do with the acids that are in the wine and the spiciness of the food. So it could be the food you're eating or particular styles that you like. So if you like something sweet, I wouldn't pick this because this is dry. You could get something like this, a dessert wine. It's in a small bottle, that's often a good giveaway, and the colour, it's quite golden in colour. So this sort of stuff's good with cheese as well. So it can be difficult if you're just walking through a shop and you don't know what to look for, but price is definitely one thing, and a pretty label, because outside of that you don't really know what it tastes like.
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries.
So take a minute, I want you to scan this QR code and do the quiz to find out which wine suits you. So now on to drinking the wine and storing the wine in your house. Wines can be stored at the same temperature, however it's the temperature at the time of service that makes a difference. If you serve your white wines too cold, they'll be flavourless, and red wines are too warm, they'll be flabby. If you've got a champagne, sparkling or dessert wine, they should be stored all the way down here at about 6 to 8 degrees Celsius. It keeps the bubbles right. When you've seen the bottle of bubbly being sprayed all over people, it's because they've heated up the bottle. The air inside has expanded, which leads to a delicious but sticky wine explosion. Chardonnay should be served at around 10 to 12 degrees, and Sauvignon Blanc just a little bit below that at 8 to 10 degrees. Pinot Grigios are also stored at about 8 to 10 degrees as well. Pinot Noirs at about 14, and the more full-bodied wines all the way up the top at 18 degrees. Notice that your wine glasses should be filled differently depending on which wine you have. So if you've got a white wine, you only want to fill it up about 1/3 of a glass, and a red wine is about 2/3. This is so that the wines don't heat up too much and ruin the experience. You also want to pick a wine glass that supports the wine. Red wine glasses, such as Burgundy and the Sauvignon Blanc glasses, have larger and fuller bowls with a larger rim that allows you to dip your nose in to detect the aromas. So that's the Burgundy is this one, and the Cabernet Sauvignon is this one. The Bordeaux glass, the reason for that is the aromas of the wine are so complex and flavoursome that they demand a larger surface area to ensure that the wine comes into contact with more air. The Bordeaux glass is traditionally taller than traditional wine. The Bordeaux glass is The Bordeaux glass is taller than traditional wine glasses, yet the bowl is not quite as large. It is designed for full-bodied, heavier wines, such as Cabernets and Merlots. The tallness of the glass allows the wine to proceed directly to the back of the mouth to maximize its flavor. Alternatively, the Burgundy glass is used for lighter wines, such as Pinot Noir. It's not as tall as the Bordeaux glass, but the bowl is larger, which directs the wine to the tip of the tongue to taste its more delicate flavors. A white wine's bowl is more U-shaped and upright than that of a red's, allowing the aromas to be released while also maintaining a cooler temperature. The white wine glass style that's best for younger whites has a slightly larger opening, directing the wine to the tip and sides of the tongue to taste its sweetness. The glass for more mature white wines will be straighter and taller to dispense the wine to the back and sides of the tongue to taste its bolder flavor. The main difference between the tulip and the flute, that's these ones down the bottom. So here's our tulip and here's our flute. And the main difference is the amount of air getting to the wine. The flute, that's this one. The flute allows less access to air, while the tulip glass increases the surface area. This encourages the aroma of the wine to be more accessible. But beware, a common mistake that people make is smelling the wine when it's freshly poured, all you would smell is carbon dioxide. So when you pour your sparkling, just wait a moment before you smell the aromas. An alternative is just to look at every vessel as an opportunity to appreciate wine. Toast. This tradition comes from the same area that wine originated, Georgia. There are plenty of different theories as to why we toast. Some speculate that the toast drove away evil spirits. Others say it was strictly a paranoid habit, a way of making sure your drink wasn't poisoned. A hard clink would slosh the liquid around, contaminating everyone else's glass. Neither is likely true, although many of our traditions today were yesteryear's way of warding off evil spirits. There's no evidence that our ancestors toasted to drive away ghouls. And the poison theory is bunk because people have only been clinking glasses for 300 years, long after toasting was born. It's called toasting because in the 17th century, people would add spiced toast to their glass before drinking it for extra flavour. In the time the flavours were mixed, you would say your quick speech and then down it. So now looking at language to impress your friends. We've already learned some new vocabulary like fermentation, must, dry, tannin. Now we're going to learn some new adjectives to describe the taste and experience of wine. We've already learned about the body of the wine. When a wine feels like full cream milk in your mouth, like a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Californian Chardonnay, it's called full-bodied. Conversely, the wine feels more watery or like skim milk, like Pinot Noir or Riesling, is light-bodied. So we don't say bodied itself, always with full or light in front of it. Earlier, we swirled our wines around the glass, and the liquid began to settle. Tears were formed on the edge of the glass. These little drippy bits are called legs, and they indicate how alcoholic a wine is. So legs. White wines that are aged in oak have a buttery taste to it. This is creamy, a smooth buttery taste. So you can describe your oak-aged wines as creamy. Alcohol in your wine is what carries the aromas up to your nose. If your wine is really alcoholic and it's burning your nose, we would describe it as hot. This is like vodka, not what you want for your wine. So, hot. When you smell your wine, if you smell dirt, leaves, and wood, you can call it earthy. This isn't positive or negative, it just smells like these things, and you might like it. So we call it earthy. You're smelling your wine. It's brilliant, it's rich and delicious. As you taste it, your mouth is watering. Call this wine decadent. It really fills your mouth with flavor. So we call it decadent. Okay, so now you can see how it's spelt. Here is light and full-bodied, legs, creamy, hot, earthy, and decadent. Now for some more advanced language. Building on from the decadent sensation, sometimes an oak-aged Chardonnay has a weighty, oily sensation in the center of your tongue. We call this unctuous. It's that ooey-gooey feeling in your mouth. Biting into a really ripe fruit that is sweet and juicy. If we could bite into wine like a ripe nectarine, we would call it fleshy. It's usually on riper wines from warmer vintages or climates. This word is when a wine isn't showing its full potential, like it's hiding something. For example, when you've chilled a red wine for too long, the fruit flavors are not noticeable and it tastes bitter. This is closed. It's often for wines that have not aged enough. If you have a wine that is really acidic and tastes like you're putting a triangle in your mouth, you can describe it as angular. This is not a welcoming wine. Finally, a pleasant, refreshing smell is that of summer rain. This earthy smell can be described as petrichor. This can describe both red and white wines and was made up by Australian researchers in the 1960s. So this is the smell of summer rain on a dry earth. we can't finish the lecture without some traditional Australian culture, goon. On the left, we see our precious goon bag, and on the right, we see a traditional Australian drinking game called Goon of Fortune. It combines two things that are crucial in Australian culture, which is the clothesline and the goon sack. You spin the clothesline, and whoever it lands on, it designates how much they should drink. Wine tasting. This is a spa resort called Unisun, I've stuffed that up, but oh well, in Hakone, Japan. You can bathe in wine, and you can also choose from green tea, coffee, and other types of spas as well. How home? You can go to Margaret River in Western Australia, which is 3 hours south of Perth. You can go to Barossa Valley in South Australia, which is 1 hour north of Adelaide. This one also offers hot air balloon rides. Bruny Island in Tasmania, which is 2 hours south of Hobart, or Orange in New South Wales, which is 3 hours and 30 minutes west of Sydney. Finally, you have Mudgee, which is 3 hours and 30 minutes northwest of Sydney, and we also have Hunter Valley, which is 3 hours north of Sydney. At EF, we frequently go on trips to the Hunter Valley. The whole group goes for wine tastings, and you can go to some gorgeous wineries with some beautiful scenery. Just ask at the activities desk for when the next trip to a winery will be, so you can test out your knowledge. So cheers, in victory you deserve champagne, and in defeat you need it. Just a little toast from Napoleon Bonaparte. Left, you've got some recommendations for pairing your wines. You can look at the wine that you want to drink and then choose your dinner from that. Or you can find your dinner on here, for example chicken, and pair it with the wine that coincides. Alternatively, you could go to this simpler one and just find, okay, I want to have fish, and look at the options that are recommended for you. So fish would go as sparkling wine or a light dry white like Sauvignon Blanc. Complete the quiz to get your attendance. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.